Well, hey there everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Adam, thanks for hanging out with me again today. In today's video, well, I'm answering all of your guys' questions. Well, not all of them, but all the ones that were sent in. You know, your internal questions I can't do much for. So there's quite a lot. I think there's close to 50 questions, so I'm just going to kind of start blasting through them. I'm going to chop out like extra little bits of the comment, so it's just going to be the questions. So Peter Edwards asked, how do you film your running videos, and what type of cameras do you use, and what editing software do you use? For my main camera, I have a Sony ZV-1 little vlogging camera, I guess is what it's considered. It's not a DSLR, but it's just a small form factor vlog camera. Basically most of the run footage is on the GoPro. I have a pair of GoPro 11s, and most of the run footage is with the GoPro attached to my hat. I've just found this is the easiest way for me to keep track of the car. I've tried doing it on the radio. You know, I've got a couple, like I've got a radio mount on this one, but you've got to follow the car like this, and I tend to drive, you know, with this kind of going all over the place, so the footage was just terrible. So mostly it's the head cam. Now I do have small tripods I'll set up with the GoPros. For the track footage, a lot of times I will set up the actual studio camera out there on a tripod away from the track so it doesn't get hit, and that's what's doing the main video, and then I'll move the GoPros around some of the times. Some of the times I just kind of set them down and get what I get. But otherwise I've got a little Insta360 Go. It's a little teeny tiny little thing, and I like this one because I can stick it to the car. Now I kind of stopped using it for a while because I found the adhesive mount, it bobbled this around a lot still, just because this was kind of top heavy. But Al from Spare Time RC actually gave me a tip. He uses the blue poster tack and attaches the blue poster tack to it, and then you can mount that to the car. It stays on there nice, and it doesn't have that shimmy shake that the Insta360 mount has to it. So I may start using this a little bit more. I just got to remember to take it out there. So that's pretty much standard issue of the gear I have. And as far as editing software, from the start I've been using DaVinci Resolve. It's the free version, and one of these days I may actually pay for it, but so far I haven't needed any of the extra features the paid version offers. So I just learned that and have been using that since day one. And it really depends on your computer. You know, if you have a Mac, then there's a lot of editing software for Macs. If you have Windows unit, or if you have a Windows computer, then something like DaVinci Resolve works well. But it is fairly resource intensive because of all the editing stuff you can do with it. When it applies certain things, it does take a good bit of CPU and GPU power to do those things quickly. So just depends on your computer, but there's a million out there. I know there's a lot more than when I started, so just try them, figure out what you like, and go from there. Cell phones, the modern day cell phones take really good video, take excellent. I take all my pictures with my cell phone. I've got a Pixel 9 Pro, and I take all my pictures with that, and some of like the up close video. But for the most part, GoPro is the way to go. It's just the only problem with the GoPro is, putting it on a car like this isn't going to work. It's going to wibble wobble. But I can put something as small as this guy on top of this, and it doesn't, affect it anywhere near as much. But again, use what you got is the best way to start. Don't go investing thousands of bucks into GoPros and cameras to find out it's not something you want to do. Start with your cell phone and work up from there. So Bob from the Black Lodge, question is, what happened to the Laser ZX? I got it all cleaned up. I got it kind of fixed, and it's been sitting there. I was gifted some parts for it, so I have the new actual guide bushing that I need. I just need to tear it all back down and put that guide bushing in, and I still would like to get that front diff housing, but I have not been able to find one yet, just because that it's holding on, but it's not going to hold on for long. But I do have a good used set of correct wheels and tires for it, and then it has the runner wheels and tires on there, so it will make an appearance again. It's sitting over there with the RC10T, and it's kind of like the pocket of I'll get to it eventually over there. Intox Rocks. Just picked up an MRC Thunder King. It only has 2 motors and a spur and pinion, no electronics or servo. Looking for ESC, servo, and how to wire up 2 motors to the ESC ideas. Any help or point me in the right direction would be awesome. So there's a couple ways you can do it. With that chassis, you have a ton of room. You can actually get 2 Hobbywing 1060 ESCs and power 1 motor with each ESC. Now, you have to, share a common battery connection to the ESCs, and you have to run a Y splitter to your receiver, so it gets signal to both ESCs, and when you do that, you have to either cut or pull out one of the power wires from the ESC going to the receiver, because if not, you'll double flow voltage into the receiver and probably burn up your receiver. You can do it that way. You can also get something like the Hobbywing 880 ESC, which is designed to run dual motors. That's what comes stock with the Clodbusters now. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. Should be fine for that. You're not going to be really running super low turn motors in that truck. I'd highly suggest not doing that. But I think dual 12 turn motors is the cutoff limit for 2S. And I think dual 18 turns on 3S for that, which would be more than enough to make that thing go completely bonkers. I wouldn't even go anywhere near that low. Maybe 2 12-turn 550s in there, potentially, but I would probably stay above that. As far as steering goes, I've seen some run with single servo and some run, like mine has dual servo in it. If you're running dual servo, just 2 plain Jane regular servos is plenty to do the steering on that. Now, if you're only running 1, then I would suggest something like a 35 kg or a 45 kg servo would have more than enough oomph to move those front tires back and forth, no problem. So I would say probably the best way to go about it would be the Hobbywing 880 ESC, and depending on what your setup you have in there, whether they have the linkages and everything for dual, get 2 generic regular servos and toss them in. Don't blow a ton of money on getting 2 super high-end, super fast servos. You don't need it. 2 regular servos would be fine. And then if you're only set up for 1, like I said, go find a good 35 kg or 45 kg servo off of Amazon, and you should be completely fine. Or spend a little extra money and get something from, like Ecotech or ProTech or something, or it's Ecotech from A-Main or something like that. Save a little bit of money but still get a good ESC. Servo. And then for the 880, you literally have 4 motor wires coming out of the ESC, so you literally just plug positive negative into the motors and you're good to go. So Rockpile, so he says, my question, have you considered revisiting the RC10 4-wheel drive anytime soon? Given enough time and some better behavior from the young associated product, the 2 of you might just become friends after all. Not yet. It's still sitting over there. I still kind of hate it. Not enough to give up on it, but enough I'm not ready to go out and try to mess with it anymore. I do want to get the chassis brace for it. Last time I went to the one I knew worked, they were out of stock. It was right when these things were still super popular. More than likely they're in stock, so I do need to look and get the chassis brace just to keep that belt from tightening up, loosening up, tightening up, loosening up before I try to run it anymore than it has been. Alan Haidon, let's see, I just bought a body from a FTX Fury 2.0. It has all the badges on it and I would like to badge it myself. How do you safely get the factory badges off to put on my own? Easiest way to remove decals is generally get a hairdryer, warm them up, and they should peel off pretty easily. Now, you don't need it like super hot. You know, you don't want the edges of the decals curling up or anything like that. You just need to get it warm so the adhesive kind of loses its bond and doesn't want to stick to the car. Now, if it does stick to the car, not a big deal. On Lexan. Now, if it's a painted body, you don't want to do this, but if it's an unpainted, like it's the outside of a Lexan body, get some Goo Gone, it'll take that residue right off. Now, do not use Goof Off. There's two different things. There's Goo Gone, that's good. Goof Off, that's bad. Goof Off has its own place, but not for something like that. Goo Gone just removes the adhesive. It's basically like an orange oil, and it won't hurt the plastics. Goof Off is orange oil with some other kind of chemicals in there that will possibly craze up and damage the plastics, and definitely will tear up paint. Goo Gone should not tear up the paint, but it is very oily, so probably you might not want to put that on a painted body, but on the outside of Lexan should be fine. But again, Goo Gone, good. Goof Off, bad. So Brendan MCG says, what's the specs on your outdoor track? Overall, it's roughly 25 foot wide by 48 feet in depth. It has 4 6-foot lanes, and obviously I lose a little bit per lane for the 6-inch pipe. But other than that, it's just, you know, a double U shape, so it's a U inside of a U. The 2 back corners are just banked. Honestly, what I did is I had 2 big chunks of old pine log. I put those in the corner, built up the walls, mounded dirt up to it, and that's what's been there since I built it 3 years ago. And eventually the logs will completely rot out and I'll have to put more dirt back in, but at that point it was just an easy way to not have to use so much dirt. And then the carpeting in the middle is just indoor-outdoor carpeting, and I use little tiny, well, not tiny, but they're like 6-inch long staples that you put down in the ground, and it just keeps the edges of the carpeting from lifting up and moving around. Let's see, Spare Time RC. My question is, how do you clean your RCs after you run them and they're a bit messy with mud and grass, whatever? And how do you keep the black chassis and suspension arms from turning that grayish color? So it kind of depends. If it just got dusty from the track, then a blast in the air compressor and a quick wipe down, so microfiber towel soaked down with some spray away glass cleaner, works great. The only thing you don't want to get this on is acrylic paint. So your driver figure paint and stuff like that, it does have alcohol in it. So if you spray this right on there, it can soften up the acrylic water-based paints. Regular painted bodies, you know, Lexan, all that stuff, I've never had it hurt any of that. Microfiber towels. I love microfiber towels. I always have, you know, a selection of them in the drawer beside me. And I will cycle through, you know, I don't use it and then throw it in trash. I'll cycle through it. So if I'm just cleaning up this truck, you know, I can use it dry and good to go. Now, if it's dusty, I can spray this on there, wipe it down, and then I can reuse this again to wipe up something that was dirtier than that. So if I brought this back in and it's got crap all over it, I can wipe that down. And then I will save even kind of the dirty, grungy ones for, you know, when I'm rebuilding shocks. I can wipe my fingers off on that and get the oils off and stuff like that. I'm not too worried about, you know, the little bit of dirt and grunge that's in there. And then I throw them all in a trash can. Now, I don't throw them away, but I put them all in a trash can, and then I will take hot water and a giant paint mixer, drywall mud mixer on a drill, and I will mix them up and let them sit, and then I'll mix them up, let them sit, mix them up, let them sit. I'm basically pre-washing them before I put them in my washing machine, because my wife would kill me if I just threw an armload of nasty, old, dirty, grungy things into the washing machine. So I clean them up the best I can, rinse them all out really well. So what I'll do is I'll clean them up in that trash can. I'll wring them all out, get all the dirty water out of it, fill up the trash can with clean water, put them all back in, do the rinse cycle again with the drill, and clean them all out. Then I'll go upstairs and put them into the washing machine and actually wash them and dry them. Now, when I'm I know I'm going way down too far on the road with this, but the way I also cycle through them is I'll buy brand new ones and I'll use those for my primary day-to-day. And then the ones that are dirty, depending on how clean they get, some of them go out to the garage and they become shop rags, and then some of them kind of stay in here and become like, I've got something really gross I've got to clean up rag. So it just depends. And as far as keeping the chassis and the suspension arms from turning grayish, I really don't have that problem. I would say probably like I hate to say WD-40 because that tends to attract dirt, but I know that will kind of breathe life back into some plastics, put the oils back in them and shine them back up. So possibly that. Whatever you're probably using on there may be potentially damaging the plastic or leaving some sort of residue behind that's giving you that grayish color. Because I've been cleaning all of mine with this for a long time, and I've cleaned my granite 30 times using this stuff, and it's still nice black shiny plastic. So I'm not sure on that one, but I would say probably you probably even use it as like an Armor All. Get like not the shiny glossy Armor All, more like the interior kind of dull finish Armor All, and just kind of feed that plastic and not do any more damage to it. But compressor, and then knock off all the big chunks, spray away rags, clean them up, toothbrushes, dental picks, everything. When I clean them back up, I try to get them as clean as I possibly can. This one still needs some more work done on the tires, but it's kind of hard to see when you're cleaning them. They look clean and then they dry out and they got some dirt on there. But yeah, that's that one. So Canon stuff. For the Ask Me Anything video, at what age did you get into RC? So as long as I can remember, I've been playing with RC cars. I was chasing them around when you had the little forward backwards switch wired to a car with 5 feet of wire, running around as a little kid chasing stuff around, and then graduated to the small little RCs that only turned in reverse. So you drove it forwards, and in order to make it turn, you put it in reverse, and it would kind of go backwards and turn in one direction. So you have to do that Ace Ventura, 15-point turn. So if you want to make a left turn and your car only turned to the right, you got to make a 15-point turn to take a left. Then I graduated up to toy store cars, and then Tyco cars. I had my favorite one was the heads-up turbo hopper, and then finally got into the hobby grade later on. So Paul over at Right Place asked, how many empty soda cans makes a 1-ounce ingot? He said he was joking, but I found the answer. It was it takes roughly 32 cans to make a pound, so roughly 2 cans equals an ounce. So 2 soda cans, and you melt that down and get your ingot. And he said, but serious question, what Kyosho vintage car runs best on the track? 4-wheel drive? Honestly, all of them run really, really well. Any of the Optima cars are awesome. You can get the regular Optima, the Optima Pro, the Optima Gold. They're all great. The Javelin, I don't have one yet. That is one on my list, but that's another awesome one. But even the 2-wheel drive ones are great. I love my Tomahawk. I want to get the Beetle. I have the Turbo Scorpion. That one is also awesome. I do need to get the regular Scorpion at some point, but the Beetle is ahead of that, and then the Javelin is ahead of that. So one of these days. But yeah, for a 4-wheel drive, any of the Optimas are absolutely awesome. So John Foster from JFRC says, my question is, if technicality wasn't an issue and you were able to make a bespoke Frankenstein RC, what would it replicate, and what chassis would you start with? More than likely a more modern monster truck. And based off of like the TXT chassis, that twin vertical plate aluminum chassis, and put a fancy suspension on there, big actual heavy duty axles on there. Tamiya could actually make an axle like a big heavy duty crawler type thing where it's going to take some abuse. Think the Losi LMT meets the TXT, something along those lines. I really, really, really wish Tamiya would bring out another big monster truck, but it just seems like they're content with on-road cars and some buggies and an occasional goofball truck like the squish van and stuff. Monster trucks they don't seem to be interested in anymore. So Peter over at CW1 Creations said, my question is to you, if you were only allowed to have 3 RCs, which would you choose? So for this one, I just kind of thought in the line of like the Tamiya kits and stuff like that. You know, the world, there's a million of them out there, so it's hard to pick just 3. The 3 that I would pick from my collection would be a Clodbuster, a Lunchbox, and a Manta Ray. The Clodbuster, just because nothing else drives and acts like those. I love watching them, you know, wiggle and bobble and bumble around. And, you know, if you want to spend the money, you can soup them up and make them race chassis and all that stuff. But they're just hilarious and fun being this super accurate 1980s monster trucks. Lunchbox, just because it's never failed to put a smile on my face. It's always a fun truck, and you know, it's never not going to be a fun truck. And then the Manta Ray, I picked that one basically because pound for pound and dollar for dollar, I don't think there's another one out there that runs with it. The Manta Ray, just for as inexpensive as a kit as it is, it just boogies, and I really, really enjoy that Buggy. And part of it I think is just because it is such an inexpensive kit, I just toss it around. I don't care. You know, even the TTO2E, the TTO2Bs are right in the same price, and the Manta Ray will run circles around those. So I would say those would be my 3 that I would keep. Fortress RC Adventures, I would like to watch more little 1/24 scale crawlers. What do you think? Honestly, I just never think to take them out. Mostly, a lot of it is from spring until late fall. My little rock crawler course is down in the bottom in a low spot in the woods, and the bugs in there are ridiculous. Mosquitoes and gnats and mayflies and everything else is constantly annoying the hell out of me. There's 2 things I loathe about warm weather: sweating and bugs. And down there, it is both of them. Big time. But it's just one of those things, you know, in the fall time, I'm blowing leaves and doing stuff, and in the wintertime, I just don't ever think to get them out. I should. For some reason, they just kind of hang out up there. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little mini crawlers, and you know, I hardly ever remember to take them out. You guys need to go over to Al's channel and tell him that he needs to build his rock crawling course over there, and maybe I'll get him out there a little bit more. So that's kind of the answer for that one. DJ Nino Brown. It seems like it needs an intro. DJ Nino Brown. Sorry, that just sounded like it needed an intro. So he basically said he loves the BBX. I inspired him to paint his purple. And what Tamiya would you recommend that is almost as good as the BBX and as quick? Is the DTO4 good? So depending on where you're running, some things are going to do a whole lot better than others. So right now, if you're running a 2-wheel drive and you're enjoying that, then I would say DTO4 is awesome. Sandviper is great. The Super Astute, hands down, is awesome. But that is a little bit more pricey. And if you want to venture into 4-wheel drive, I would say the Manta Ray is a great one, and also the TTO2B is a great one as well. TTO2B has umpteen million hop-up parts you can put on it, and handles brushless power pretty well. And if you do mess up something in there, parts are readily available anywhere and everywhere for those. Manta Ray, parts not quite as readily available, but it does run better than the TTO2. Super Astute, being 2-wheel drive, is a tremendous buggy. I really, really love how well that drives. But then a little bit more budget-friendly, well, depending on where you live, budget-friendly may not be. Sandviper is a great one as well. And still decent parts support around for DTO4s. Let's see. And what do you think Tamiya's fastest buggy is? Again, that one is a very, very hard one to answer because it comes down to three things. Where you're driving it, how you're driving it, and how much power you've got in it. You can be on a dirt track with a underpowered two-wheel drive car and a grossly overpowered two-wheel drive car. And if you're not great at driving, you're going to put in a lot faster laps with the underpowered car than you are with the overpowered one. So it really comes down to where are you driving, how good is your driving, and how much power are you trying to put in to something. If you're putting a 5,000 kV brushless system in a two-wheel drive buggy, good luck. It's just going to fry the rear wheels off of it, and you're not going to have any control. And as soon as you get it up to speed, you're going to slam on the brakes and try to make a turn. So it's kind of budget oriented, skill oriented, and are you using it to the best of its abilities? Try to find, I would say, for speed, especially on a track, you're going to look at tires and suspension more than the power you're putting down, because you can add power all day, but if you can't get it on the ground and keep it on the ground with the tires and the suspension, then you're just literally spinning your wheels. So again, kind of a hard one to answer. Overall, four-wheel drive is generally the fastest it's going to be on a track. Brushless power is going to give you the speed, but again, if you can't put the power down, if you've only got two-wheel drive and you're trying to put brushless power down, maybe get a slower motor, go back to brushed, and you might see your straight line speeds will go down, but your actual track speeds will go up. So again, kind of hard question to answer, and I am terrible about driving, so take my driving advice with a grain of salt. Brad Cowman asked, would you like to get an original Blackfoot and paint it box art? No, not really. It's a black paint job, dude. Just go out there, stick it on a box, spray black paint on there, you're done. It's then he said, what other Tamiyas are you looking forward to coming out this year? The minis, the Mini Coopers, the June Watanabe Hornet, and of course Honda City Turbo, which should be coming out very soon. Some places already have it. US should be getting them anytime now. Apartment Workshop RC, APT Workshop RC. Can you take the King Yellow and paint the body like a Bob Ross painting? Reverse painting sounds awesome. Awful. Awesomely awful. So the Bob Ross style is you basically, and I think a lot of painting in general, is you start in the background and you move forward. And that gives you your depth and that feeling that you're looking out into a scene. With these, especially Lexan, you're painting the most seen thing first and then background after. So I would literally have to reverse everything I've ever seen Bob Ross do and try to do that on a very, very tiny canvas. So no. You are way, way, way beyond my skill level and patience level. On canvas, it is still tricky and not something I'm great at. By the time you've seen this video, hopefully you guys have seen my painting video, the time lapse, so hopefully you guys like that. I had a good time doing it, but yeah, on an RC car body, no, it's not going to happen. So Art Wallace asked, and a lot of people ask me this, what do you use to lift up your RCs so tires don't touch the ground? They are foam yoga blocks. So this is a third of a foam yoga block. So normally they were like this wide. So it's like a 6-inch by 4-inch by 9-inch block of foam. I take mine out to my garage. I have a bandsaw and I just rip them down to whatever size I want. So a lot of times I'll cut them in half and I'll get 2 out of each one. But for stuff like the touring cars and some of the buggies that don't have a lot of ground clearance, I can get away with cutting them in thirds, and the chassis just sits right flat on that. And I can get 3 blocks out of, or 3 stands out of 1 block. Now, you can cut them in other ways. The bandsaw works the best. You just have that really quick blade running through there. It cuts right through it, doesn't leave a real jagged mess. I would not try to cut it on something like a chop saw unless you're super experienced with one. It should cut it just fine, but there is a high chance that it was going to want to grab and yank it out of your fingers, so not a great idea. You can cut them with like a hacksaw or even a fine tooth like trim saw, like a back saw or something like that. But you just have to, cut down through it, and it's going to leave some little bit of jaggedness on the outsides. The other way you can cut them is by getting one of the really long, extendable razor knives and cut through it, extend a knife a little bit, cut through it, extend a knife, cut through it, and eventually you will cut through the whole thing. You may not get it perfectly settled, but if you do have like a belt sander or something, you can sand on these and with like a really rough grit and sand it flat. My bandsaw, like I said, that's the cut edge on the bandsaw. So that's the factory side and that's the cut side. If you don't have one, ask friends, neighbors, family, grandparents, something like that. Somebody's probably got one stuck out in the shed that is hopefully big enough that you can run them through. But again, I get, for the yoga blocks, I usually get a pair of them from Amazon or something, and they range anywhere from $11-12 to $15-16 usually for a pair. So still, $12 for 2 car stands is not unheard of. It's not terrible. There's not too many accessories you can get for $6 for your RC car. So this one was interesting, and I like that somebody's getting back into the hobby. So Victor Rubiera says, I have a very beautiful VW Bus RC. It's very old. I bought it in 99 or 2000. Can I upgrade the old square remote to a newer one? Yes. Yes, with a caveat. The only caveat is, as long as your electronic speed control or your mechanical speed control has BEC with it. So you have the little servo wire coming out with the black and the red that plugs into your receiver to power your receiver. You can upgrade it to any radio system out there that's currently available on the market. All you need is that power from your ESC or your MSC to get to there, to the receiver to power it up. The voltage on those really has not changed. It's anywhere between 4 to 6 volts, and the receivers are designed to use that range of power. Now, what radio do you want to upgrade to? It's 2.4 gigahertz. You can go pistol grip. You can go twin sticks, whichever ones float your boat, whichever one you're more comfortable with. Personally, I love the pistol grip ones. I struggle driving with twin sticks for cars. Tanks and stuff and the big trucks, because they're going slow, I do a lot better. But trying to make rapid things, I'm slowing down, speeding up, cranking left, cranking right, and it just doesn't work well for me. 2.4 gigahertz, get a radio and receiver combo. Don't go out and spend $500 on some super cool computer radio for a VW bus. Spend $50-60, get a decent radio system for it. Dumbo RC, Radio Link. Look on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of times you'll find really good deals on Spectrum radios and receivers that came out of somebody's kit that they bought. They bought a nice basher and they upgraded to their own radio system. They have their Futaba radio and their Futaba receivers, so they put that in there and then they took all this out. They're going to sell that old radio for $20. If you have swap meets near you, sometimes local hobby shops will have consignment areas where people have takeouts. You don't have to spend a ton of money to upgrade it, and like I said, as long as that BEC is there, you're good to go. Now, you can do without the BEC. You can get a 4 AA battery pack and power your receiver off of that, but it's easier to do it if you have the BEC circuitry in there already. And if you bought it in 99, 2000, it should have it in there. Even the mechanical speed controllers back in 99, 2000 had BEC circuitry to them. which is battery elimination circuitry. So BEC circuitry is a redundant statement. Sorry if I triggered anybody, but basically it just removes that battery pack that I was talking about out of the scenario. I'm gonna do a couple more, then I'm gonna take a break. So next time you see me, you may see me wearing something else, but I'm gonna get to the bottom of this page and I'm gonna take a break. Mad BRC. First question is, has there been any interesting newcomers to the RC scene lately on YouTube? Maybe it's Mad something, ringing a bell. So if you're not familiar with Mad BRC, James, he is a huge Tamiya fan, is in almost every Tamiya channel's comments section, and he has now got his own RC channel on YouTube, doing it for the Boy Boys Speedrun Challenge, but I hope he kind of progresses and keeps it going. So head over there, hit subscribe, watch him tear up a grasshopper along with the rest of us in the Speedrun Challenge, and then hopefully after that, the nerves settle down, he gets a little bit more comfortable behind the camera, and he'll keep yabbering on like I'm doing right now. Second question is, what's the part of YouTube you dislike the most and takes its toll? It's not necessarily YouTube. It is the self-imposed deadlines and schedule I put on myself. For the longest time, I had to do one video a week. I had to do one video a week, and that video came out. I think it was generally every Saturday I had a video come out. And then it got more popular, so then I felt like, okay, I'm doing more, I should do 2 videos a week. So then that's when the Wednesday, Saturday schedule came out. And I've done the best I can to keep up with that, but there are times where I am doing something Wednesday night down here, trying to get something done, trying to get it finished, trying to get it recorded, run upstairs, spend a couple hours editing, upload it, go to bed, wake up the next morning, and then I'm answering questions, and I'm kind of burnt out from that whole day before. And I love you guys in the comments, don't get me wrong, but it does take a toll on you after a while. So, and I know a lot of you guys out there, have told me many times, take a break, take a break. While I appreciate the sentiment behind that, if I take a break for too long, I'm just going to stop. I have always been very flighty with hobby stuff and things I'm interested into. So I would go from this thing to that thing to this thing to that thing to this thing to this thing to this and back to this thing, over here. Some of them have been reoccurring over and over and over. The woodworking has been reoccurring throughout my adult life. RCs have been recurring, artistic stuff has somewhat been reoccurring, but I have done so much random stuff that if I don't stay focused on this, if I don't keep doing this, then it starts to get pushed to the side, and the more it gets pushed to the side, the less I'm going to want to do this. So I would say that's kind of the biggest yin-yang thing, is if I have to keep going, but sometimes keeping going drives me crazy too. So it's kind of a this and that. All right, camera battery is dying. Okay, so I had to come back. The camera battery died, and we were right there at a break. So I'm back, new day, new clothes, and we're gonna finish knocking this out. So we left off with Mad B's question, and the next one up is Nikki Kuneman. My question is, my RC journey started out in the 80s when my father brought me the Frog. He talked about sitting down, building it. Later years, I've kept up with the hobby, but recently I noticed that I couldn't be bothered with the hobby at all. I built trucks, buggies, boats. Now I feel like there's nothing new. Same kits and new wrappings, not to mention the cost of these kits nowadays, and the interest has dropped drastically. Does anyone feel the same, and what can I do to bring back the interest? Do I just let everything be and hope it will return? What? Thanks in advance, and amazing, blah, blah, blah. So burnout with any hobby is common. And for years, I hopped from hobby to hobby to hobby. I turned wooden pins and other stuff on the lathe, and I did that, and I kind of got bored of that. Then I started making little jewelry pendants out of woodworking and epoxy, and I got bored doing that. And then I started doing what they call acrylic pour painting, where you mix up a bunch of colors and pour it on the canvas and make it do things. And I just kind of hopped. RC for me has always been a thing and something I've always come back to. But there are times where I've completely abandoned it and, walked away from it for 6 months, a year, 3 years, just depended. Money is always a big factor. I think everybody gets caught up, especially YouTubers. We get caught up in buying the newest, buying the coolest, showing it off, get that new kit as soon as it comes out, get it on the channel, now, which becomes very expensive. The other thing is, there's so much stuff out there now. When we were growing up, there was 2 or 3 big companies doing this, and you didn't have adult money, so you kind of you got one and you were happy to have it for quite a long time. You fixed it up, you broke it, you repaired it, whatever, and then it kind of got worn out, and that's when you started looking for a new one. Now we're all, I would say, primarily 35 to 55. Some younger, some older, but I think that's kind of the core of who's spending all of this money on RCs, because we all have, we've gotten to the point in our lives where we have some of that disposable income and are spoiling ourselves. We didn't get this stuff as a kid, so we're buying it now. And there comes a point to where you either have done so much, you're like, do I really need anything else? What is enough? Or you kind of get to the point where, God, I've spent a lot of money. Should I keep spending money on this stuff? And so it affects everybody a little bit differently. A lot of times I will take a week off of just not coming down here, not fussing about anything, and usually when I come back to it, I'm like, cool, I'll find something that interests me, whether it's a new build or pulling off a project car or, painting a new body for one of the cars you already have, something that usually kind of kickstart you back into it. But, sometimes it takes 6 months or a year before you kind of stroll back into it and find that interest and desire to, get something new. As far as, there's nothing new out, there might not be anything, damn bug, might not be anything necessarily new that you want. But man, there's all kinds of new stuff out. So look into something that you don't have. If you have a bunch of Tamiya stuff and a bunch of Kyosho stuff and, you don't want to build a kit, look at some of the micros and minis out now, like the little Losi Micro T and the little Losi Mini Ts and Mini Bs. If you have somewhere where you can run those, in like a open area in your house or, a parking lot near you, man, those things are ridiculously fun little cars. They're not terribly expensive, but they're a great bang for the buck. If you've always been into fast buggies and stuff, maybe pick up a 24 scale crawler, or, I would say probably get something bigger than that, like an 18th scale crawler, 12th, 18th scale, and, go out and try crawling. You might think, oh, that's so, I'm one. Who in the world wants to go out there and go super slow and just crawl over a pile of rocks? Until I did it. And then I was like, man, this is so much fun going really slow, and I need to find a bigger pile of rocks. It just, maybe try something that's, outside of the wheelhouse of your normal. If you've, you said you've done, you've done truck, buggies, and boats, maybe try a rock crawler. And, don't you have to go break the bank and get a Vanquish rock crawler? Just get something that's reasonably affordable. Like a Red Cat Gen 8 or something like that. There's still plenty of parts available for them, and they were great kits. What else is another good one? Unfortunately, they no longer have the XCX-10-2 kits. Those were awesome. But, you can get a builder's kit of a Traxxas or an SCX-10, like an Axial or something. Or, just, like I said, try something different. And if that doesn't fix it, just take a break. Go search through YouTube and find something else to focus on and, take up your attention. And, 6 months later, you might be back to it. So next one up is Andy P. He asked, how many people use this hobby as therapy from everyday life? I do myself, but I'm not a YouTuber yet. I retire from work in 2 years, and I'd love to set up a channel giving advice to other RC people. From RC cars, planes, boats, drones. I live in the UK, thinking about reaching out to people on Facebook. I have definitely used this as a therapy session. You know, it's the day-to-day grind gets to everybody. You know, whether you're bottom of the barrel or cream of the crop, you know, the day-to-day grind is still a day-to-day grind. You know, if you're out there having to work for a living, something about it drives you mad. You know, whether it's the commute, the work, the amount of energy it takes, you know, the amount of mind power it takes, whatever it is, work is just draining. You know, that's why old age sucks, is because you kind of used it all up when you get here. But I do believe that most of us are using this as some form of mental therapy. Whether you're reliving your past, you're living the past that you wanted to have. You know, that's kind of me. You know, I had spent hours and hours and hours and hours of my youth staring at these cars and magazines and stuff like that, and it's all I wanted, you know, but couldn't afford it. So now I can afford it. I have a ton, and I enjoy all of them. But you know, it can be a crutch, and it can lead to other problems. You know, you can definitely go into debt quickly if you're not responsible with it. Using it as therapy is great. Abusing it as therapy is not. But as far as starting a YouTube channel, you know, well, let me go back. I don't do Facebook groups. I am in some of them, and the only two that I actually pay any attention to at all is Tamiya Legends group and the Poor Boys RC group. Mostly Poor Boys RC group at this point. You know, I'll scroll through Facebook and I'll like pictures, and occasionally I'll comment on something on Tamiya Legends group, but mostly anything I'm doing group wise is in the Poor Boys RC group, just because it's well moderated, and anything that's dumbassery or dickish that's posted gets taken down pretty quick, or you know, people do get reprimanded and yelled at for it. And I just hate Facebook groups. You know, the keyboard commandos and the experts drive me batshit crazy. I hate them, honestly. You know, and I was raised to where, you know, if you don't have something nice to say to somebody, just shut the hell up and keep it to yourself. And Facebook seems to strip that filter off of everybody. Sorry. Pet peeve of mine. Can you tell? Anyway, as far as starting a YouTube channel, do it. You know, you don't have to start out with anything grandiose. If you have a good cell phone, you've got a YouTube studio. You know, get a tripod with a camera holder on it. Maybe a cheap Amazon vlog light, and just whatever editing software you can find that's free and you find easy to use. You've got a YouTube channel. You know, I know a few guys that only do things on their phone. They record everything on their phone. They take all the action shots on their phone. They do all the editing on their phone. I can't do it. I've got to sit down at a computer and edit and, you know, be able to layer things. I can't do it on my phone, but I know a lot of folks can. So as far as starting a YouTube channel, just do it, and you know, have fun with it. All right, so moving on, Bargain Bashes RC. My question for the video is, what is your favorite car outside of Tamiya RCs? I'd have to say probably favorite genre outside of the Tamiya and Kyosho stuff is kind of the Arma Basher line. And you know, I've got two Typhon 3S's. I've got the Big Rock 3S. I've got a Granite that's now 3S. I've got the little Vortex. I've got the Gorgon. And then I've also got the Team Corrali Kagama 4. But, you know, that I'm kind of leaning more towards that. Just take it out, rip it around, smash it around, bash it about don't really have to worry about any fragile plastic snapping on me, or, brittle wings getting ripped off and all that stuff. It's just bounce it, trounce it, come back inside. I can blow it off with the compressor, and if it's dirty, a little bit dirty, then it's good enough. So those are kind of like my fun haver, enjoyable ones. I love, love, love building these things and taking them from a box of parts and a clear body to something that looks this nice. And I typically don't beat on them. I don't have a need to beat on them. I've got beaters over there that I can go out and trounce around and don't care about. And I can walk into my hobby shop tomorrow and pick up a handful of replacement parts and have it fixed. I go out there and I break 2 or 3 things on this. Well, I've got to go to Tamiya USA, and I've got to go to eBay, and I've got to go to freaking order parts from the UK, because parts are somewhat more difficult to find for these things. So beating up an Arma, I just don't mind, and I enjoy that. Having that peace of mind where if I see a whole suspension arm and wheel go off of it, I can fix that tomorrow. Just go down to my hobby shop and buy the parts. So let's see, VSCI 79, what battery connector types do you have most in your RCs, and why? So by default, because I have 80% Tamiya, 90% Tamiya, the classic white Molex Tamiya plug I have on a ton of cars, because there's no need to replace them. I'm not running huge amounts of current draw. I'm running 6L NIM packs, and that's not gonna blow out a Tamiya connector. If I replace a connector, I replace it with a Dean's or T-plug connector, just because that's kind of what my go-to for a replacement plug. I'm not going to put another Tamiya plug back on there. If that one breaks or melts, I'm going to go ahead and put a T-plug on it. But a lot of the Hobby Wing 1060s you have to buy come with the T-plug on there. You only really get the Tamiya plug now if you get it with a kit from Tamiya. So T-plugs are my second, and then I do have a mixture of others. I've got XT90, XT60, XT30s, and then some of the other flavors of those as well. But for the most part, Tamiya plugs, Dean plugs, and then a smattering of other randomness. Michael Dorch, is there a reason you have not done much with crawlers? And have you thought about doing any long-term tests, like if you took out the Armor Granite, even the brush version, and ran it in all kind of conditions, clean it up, keep running it, and see how it holds up? So crawlers, I generally don't think about taking them out, honestly. And it's not that I don't like taking them out, but generally the way things have evolved on the channel is get a kit, build a kit, run a kit, move on to the next one, build a kit, run a kit, and all that stuff. So I'm typically, for the channel, I'm going from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other, restoring one, whatever it is. So it's kind of just, get it built, get it restored, run it, and then, move on to the next thing. So running cars for myself is, I'm not going to bring the camera out with me. I'm not going to go through the hassle of, wearing the GoPro hat and putting it on my head and having that heavy thing banging around on my head for a while. I just grab a battery, I pick a car off the wall, I go outside, I run it, I come back in, I clean it up, I put it back on the shelf, and that's for me. That's my time. And I've found I have to take my time for the RCs so I don't get burned out. When it's always cranking stuff out for a video, it takes the fun out of just getting out and driving around and, just enjoying it. When I'm out driving RCs, you have this defined area you have to drive in so it stays in camera view, and you're not like going off camera view and 3 minutes later you come back into camera view. That just makes it hellacious trying to edit it. So you have to play by rules when you're driving for a video. When you're not, there's no rules, so you just get out and you drive around, and I can just walk around the yard all over the place and run it through the woods and do whatever I want, and that's enjoyable without having the cameras around or having to deal with the cameras. As far as long-term testing, probably will never happen. ADD and attention span with me is that of a squirrel with an addiction. And what I mean by that is, you know, I'm going to keep going back to the same thing all the time, but I can't do the same thing all the time. So, you know, taking out one car and making a video of one car over and over and over again is not something that's mechanically going to happen up here. You know, I'm going to build something new. And this is the new thing, and I build that, and then I drive that, and I share it with all of you guys, and then I'm like, I got to go get that thing over there and restore that, and you know, I make a video of restoring it, and then I'll go out and run it, and then, like I said, it's just that move from one thing to the next, and then, like I said, I do my own runs, but again, that's for me. So long-term testing, it's probably not going to happen, and I have so many that focusing on one car it just doesn't interest me. You know, I come down, it's like shopping. I come down here and I'd be like, you know, I'm sitting upstairs and I'm like, okay, I want to go out and run a car today. And I'll literally come down here and, you know, put the hands on the hips and be like, what are we going to drive today? And I just pick one and grab a battery, stick it on charge, and 20 minutes later we're out running that. So, you know, there's not a whole lot of thought process. Everything just kind of happens. So probably not going to be a long-term review type person. So let's see. Gigahertz, are you going to get the June Watanabe Hornet? He says it's ugly AF, but I'm thinking about getting two, one for me and one for my daughter who's 12. Yes, I am getting some. I'm getting two. I didn't get it when it first came out. I was just kind of really getting back ramped up into the hobby and starting the channel and everything when that June Watanabe came out, and I hated it. I'm like, pink tires, purple chassis, polka dots, you know, what the hell is this? And it kind of went away, and then I was kind of like, you know, that's actually kind of cool. You know, it's so different and so weird that it did start to appeal to me. But at that point, they were all gone. And then I was like, crap. And then, you know, later on, I kind of was like, yeah, maybe I'll start looking used. And then I realized how much used ones were going for. And I'm like, no. And then they showed back up. And I think I paid $117 a piece for them. And then I got a coupon because, you know, I spent over, you know, $230 or whatever it was. So I got a coupon code from A-Main and, you know, got two. So I'm going to build one, run it, and do all that normal stuff with it. And one I am going to keep in a box. Who knows, later on down the road, it may be a giveaway car or, you know, sell it. I don't know, you know, but I figured at $115 a piece, I'm going to get two of them. I don't hardly ever get two cars at a time. But here lately, I have had doubled up on two different ones. I've got two June Watanabe Hornets coming, and I've got two of the Mini Coopers coming. That is, I just want to build one as a plain Jane box art one, and then I have another one that's going to be a completely custom crazy build. So but that's usually, it's one and done for me, but for some reason I had to get two of both of those. So no music RC. My question is, for the video, how many RCs is too many RCs? And that is a terribly hard question to answer. I think it boils down to three factors. One is, if you have looked around and said, I have absolutely too many cars, I do not need to buy another one, it's probably a strong indication that you have too many RC cars. The second one is, if you're trying to hang RC cars from the ceiling, or, you know, using up extremely interesting spaces to try to hide your RC cars, or you're like selling your furniture to make room for more shelving to put RC cars in, you might have too many. And three is, if you're going into debt because of RC cars, you have too many RC cars. That is kind of the three main factors. But if you're happy with them and you have room and you have finances to do it, there is no such thing as far as I know. I'll let you know if I reach that point. It's getting there, but I'll let you know. And I did want, this originally wasn't a question of Steve, but he said, I would pay for you to do a live stream, and I think you'd be amazing. You never rant, you explain. Well, the reason I say they're rants is because opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one, and most of them stink. I think is the way the saying goes. But I tend to feel like I'm overly negative about things sometimes, and there's a reason for me being negative sometimes. Sometimes I'm just really annoyed and frustrated with something, RC10 four-wheel drive. But other times it's the hype of things with the lack of delivery, and that frustrates me, and I'm going to relay it to you guys, so hopefully you will clearly think about what you're doing instead of just relying on the hype. The TD4, for example, everybody was all, oh my god, this is so cool, this is so neat, and there was some controversy over the looks of it, but everybody was so excited. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, are you guys seeing the same thing I am? Because that looks like a horrible design. You've got to take part of the car apart to get the battery in and out. And, they come out of the gate and they say, here are the recommended hop-ups for this car. Okay, you shouldn't be recommending hop-ups for a brand new design kit. It should be, here are the option parts that you can add to it to tune your car. Sure, that's always a thing. But when I've got to go out and I've got to buy 2 or 3 different specific hop-up parts to make it to where I can actually drive it without it destroying itself, or even building it without it coming apart, that's just a failure. You guys screwed up and you're making me fix it. RC10 four-wheel drive. So I'm not going to blow smoke and give you guys a happy joy review and come on here and be loud and in your face like this is the coolest thing that's ever happened, when it's not. Same thing with the reviews. I'm not going to get a car from a company and just blow smoke and tell you, oh man, this is the best little tiny kit you can get off of Amazon and I love this car. If I go out and I have a hell of a good time with it, I'm going to tell you I had a hell of a good time with it. If I go out there and it overheats in 2 minutes and 2 of the wheels fall off, I'm going to sit there and complain about it because it was a piece of crap and 2 of the wheels fell off and it overheated in 3 minutes. I'm not, you're going to get me every time. And that's why you guys can tell when I'm in a bad mood, or, when I sit here on the camera and I'm talking to you guys directly through that lens. I'm not just sitting down here rambling to myself. I am talking to you guys. So, but at the same time, I sit down behind the computer and I'm editing it and I'm going, Jesus, this guy is just ranting and rambling on. Just shut up. But it's all, to me, legitimate information. I need to share it with you guys. And I know some of you guys love the long format videos of me rambling on, and some of you guys are like, skip it. There's the run, and watch that. I get it. It's fine. But for you guys that sit here and listen to all my videos and enjoy the long format stuff, I'm going to give you 100% of me every time. I'm not going to blow smoke up anything to, make myself a mega popular RC channel, because that's not going to work. I'm just going to be the guy pimping crap all the time on YouTube, and everybody's going to stop watching. All right, enough of that rant. So Trey over at All RC Fun, what are your preferred cleaning tips? I like Cow RC products and the 3D line for automotive. 99% of the time, spray away glass cleaner. I use that stuff on everything. Cleaning up cars, cleaning up my desk, out in the workshop, around the house, me, my car, my truck. It is amazing. This is something that I found from Vice Grip Garage. Derek was using it for a while. He still uses it, but I think he was actually promoting it for a while. They sent him a whole bunch of stuff and he was kind of promoting it. I saw it at my local BJ's. They had a 4-pack in there. I was like, let's pick up some of that stuff. I love this stuff. I've cleaned my hardwood stairs with it, front doors, glass doors, windows. I can't think of anything that I haven't cleaned with it. I love it. Now, like I said, it is alcohol based, so it will damage acrylic, like brush on paint, if you let it sit on there. If you just quickly wipe it on and wipe it off, it should be fine, unless you just painted it. But if the paint's cured, you can wipe it off and it should be fine. Just don't let it sit on there. But hard bodies, like sand bodies, everything. I clean everything with it. I have never used, Cal RC products. I know a lot of people love them. I just haven't found a need for it. And I'm sure like some of their stuff, like if you're running crawlers or if you're racing, that muck off stuff or whatever it is that they have that you can spray on, and it kind of keeps everything from sticking so well and kind of really getting a grip on there. That may be, a great product to have. If you're racing and you're in the pits, those the wipes that they have and stuff like that, where you're not going to carry a big ass roll of paper towels, you can carry a little tiny tube of wipes and it takes care of anything, whether you're cleaning up the car or yourself. Perfect stuff. I've usually got 2 cans in here. I've got a can in the other part of the basement. There's 2 cans upstairs. There's 2 cans upstairs in the 3rd floor. I've got probably 4 cans out in the garage. Like literally, I can't go 20 feet in this house and not be near a can of spray away. Hopefully, it doesn't cause cancer or mental damage or anything like that, because I'm gonna die because I use this stuff all the time. Smells nice too. But yeah, that's kind of my main cleaning product: compressed air, spray away, and elbow grease. Oh, microfiber towels! Don't forget the microfiber towels. So Anthony Prisco, the painting video is cool. Oh, he's talking about the Bob Ross painting video. My question is, do you save the boxes from all the kits you build? No and yes. So I don't save the full boxes. I'd have to have a whole shed just for the spare boxes at this point. What I do is I'll stack them up off to the side. I'll get a big stack, and then I'll sit down here one evening with the cutting mat, and I will literally cut the lids off of the boxes, get the box art off of it. I'll even keep some of the side panels and stuff like that. Out in my garage, the upstairs, I have angled walls. So the walls come up about 4.5, 5 foot, and they're angled up to the ceiling, and then there's a ceiling area. So on that angled side, on one side of my garage, everything is covered in box lids. And soon I will have to go out there and cover up the other side. And then down here, I'm going to start hanging them up down here. So at this point, they're becoming wallpaper. So I'm not throwing them away, but I just can't keep all the big boxes, so I'm just keeping the cutoffs. Let's see, ERC. Do you think the kit building will be left behind with our generation? I think hobby kit building may. I think it's just there's more and more leaving that arena, so you're kind of left with Tamiya and a few other ones that are releasing kits. Now Associate has been releasing kits, but I think honestly they're doing more harm than help at this point, personally. But the crawlers are going to have builders kits. The racers are going to have builders kits. One, because they can sell a kit for a premium over there for a race kit, because you're buying a race kit. You're buying that brand new, cool, I'm going to be the fastest guy on the racetrack race kit, and there's no point in selling it as an RTR for even more money when they're just going to strip the electronics out of it. They're going to strip the motor and ESC. They're going to strip this out of it. They're going to change this. They're going to change that. They're going to rebuild the whole kit. So I think that side of kit building, race kits, higher end crawler kits, that type of stuff will probably last for a good while. Eventually, the crawler fad is going to fall off, and it's going to remain this kind of niche area, so there's not going to be as much growth over there. So even then, maybe kits will fall off there. I think there's always going to be racing, so there's always going to be kits for racing. But hobby kits, retro kits, I think are going to start dying off as we do. So, that's just my kind of prediction into the future. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea, but that's kind of the way I see it. Do you have a favorite motor from any time period, vintage or modern? Just not a silver can. So, in the younger years, there were a few that really, really stuck out and I really, really wanted. And I did get a couple of them. And most of them were Trinities. I think all of them are Trinities, honestly. So the Trinity Monster Horsepower one, I always loved that one. The Trinity Green Machine, I actually had one or two of those. I really love those. The slot machine was another one. And the other one that I never got, I always wanted, was the Brian Kenwald Dirtnator, or the Dirtnator 2. I think it was Dirtnator 2. But it had Brian right on the side of it, and he had the black sunglasses on and everything. It was just an awesome looking motor. And I think half of it was the looks. Everything back then, you had colored cans, colored hoods, fancy designs on it, big logos and big spreads in the magazines and, all that stuff. So it was much eye candy as it was, performance. Like most of these were 27 turn stock motors. I think the Monster Horsepower and the Green Machine was. I think the slot machine may have been a mod motor. I don't remember. And the Dirtnator, I think, was a stock motor, but was tuned. But I can't remember. But those are the ones that popped into my head when you asked the question. And he said, bonus question, what is your favorite YouTube channel that starts with Eek and ends in RC? You mean Mad BRC? No. I'll leave a link down to Eric's channel as well. He has some wonderful restorations, and he is less kind to him than I am. He'll actually get a restored car and then go out there and drive the wheels off of it a couple times, literally. I tend to baby mine a little bit more, but he has a great time going out there and ripping and running them, and I have a great time watching them, so I can't fault him at all for it. Just telling you'll actually see one flipping and flopping and rolling over on Eric's channel, where I'm like cringing thinking about it. So Mark over at RC in the Shed, my question is, what is your preferred electric systems for your kids? Kid ESCs, etc. What do you run for batteries, old school nickel metal hydride or lipos in your Tamiya buggies, to stay safe and have a great weekend? So most of the time I'm running anything Tamiya. I'm running nickel metal hydride stick pack. Most of the time is these, the Z 3600 milliamps. I've had hundreds of cycles on some of these. Some of them have crapped out a little bit earlier than other ones, but I've never had one just lose it. Just noticed the run times decreased, and I've retired them. But I've got 6 or 8 of those, so those are the workhorses. I do have 2 cells, and I do have 3 cells and 4 cells and all that stuff in lipo for some of the kits, and occasionally I will put a 2 cell in a Tamiya and run it around. Especially if it just feels a little bit squishy and soft on the nickel metal hydride, the lipo will perk it up. And most of them are running 1060 ESCs, so it's a quick jumper to switch it. And for ESCs, 90% of them are probably 1060s around here. That is the war pig ESC around here. That's the one that goes to all the time, and I have them in big kits, little kits, and they just work. Now, as far as, crawlers, it's a 1080 Hobby Wing ESC. I love them. They just work really great. And generally a Holmes Hobbies motor in there. Generally just one of their cheaper sealed can ones. If I blow it up, I fry it. It's $15-20 to get a new one and stick it in there and run it. I've yet to damage one, so I don't know what the limits are on those. But all the crawlers, I basically run 3S and 1080s. The Tamiyas are basically nickel metal hydride, and then most of the other ones are the bashers that I'm just running the stock electronics in there, the stock ESCs and stuff. Some of them I'm still running the stock transmitters. But, if it's a 3S, I'm running a 3S. If it's a 4S, I'm probably got a 4S in there. There are some where I back down, it's a 3S truck, and I'll run 2S in it just so it's a little bit more mild-mannered and not spastic all the time. So, Terrence Chan, which iconic cars would you probably be revisiting? Perhaps 3 classic ones which you could name. So, revisiting, I'm not sure. Well, one of them is a Cloudbuster because I've got one to restore up there. I've got a couple M-Series cars that I need to do kind of some restorations on, and another Sledgehammer. But 3 classics I'm looking forward to getting at some point. Sandscorcher, Javelin, and the Avante. Well, actually 4. The Avante and Buggy Champ. Sandscorcher, I love. I really want to get one for the collection. I just think it's an overpriced kit. They currently in the U.S. are about $420, and it's a $320 car at best. So I don't see me getting that anytime soon. The Javelin, now that is an expensive kit too, but I think you're getting, actually more for your money with that. It has been upgraded to handle brushless, and it's just a better kit overall. You can do chain drive, you can do belt drive, whichever you want. The Sand Scorcher is just, they're just selling it so expensive because everybody wants one. The Avante, again, pretty overpriced kit, but I can see it in that there is a whole lot more going on and refinement over the Sand Scorcher. The Buggy Champ, it's just a cool car and it's not terribly expensive, but all four of those are more expensive kits, and that's kind of why I haven't gotten them yet. It's, I've tend to buy I've said it before, but the $100 to $220 is kind of my, like, sure range. Well, the $100 to $200 is like my sure, I'll go get one range. That's kind of falls into the I can get that pretty much any time. The $200 to $300 is kind of like, do I really want it? And then when it goes over 300, that's when the great debate starts. And it's like, I've really got to crunch the numbers and, what am I actually getting for that? Spend $300. Well, like, if I spend $300, technically I got to buy this kit and this kit. And, I'm not spending too much more. So would I rather put two kits together and have all of that fun of two kits to put together, two kits to drive, two kits to take out later on? Do I just build that one and hope that it's worth the money I put into it? Is it going to be $400 worth of fun? That's kind of why that Sand Scorcher has not happened. I don't see that car being $400 worth of fun. I know it's a pain in the ass to paint because I'm going to want to paint it box art, and I know it's a pain in the ass to paint. And two, it's an SRB chassis. It's not a performance chassis, so it's just going to kind of bound around out there and do slow, bouncy, old RC stuff. Is that $430 worth it? Not right now, and I don't know when it's gonna be. But yeah, that's kind of things I'm looking at doing and things that may be coming up sometime. So David E6D6N, has Tamiya ever built what you would consider a legit attempt at a two-wheel drive race car to be competitive against the big three? I would say Super Astute back in the day, that was designed to be, a competitive race buggy. It wasn't necessarily a super high-end race buggy, but it was a race buggy and, won a lot of races. But as far as, like, world championship level racing, the only two that came to mind were the TRF 201 and the TRF 211. And the 211, I think there was like a 211 XM and a 211, and there's a couple different variations of it. I think the XM was like the kind of the top of the line, had all the lengthened it out a little bit, had the extra specs. But the TRF cars are Tamiya's, racing cars. How great they are, I'll never know. They are god-awful expensive when they're new, and they never lose their value. They just stay god-awful expensive. I get it. There are some things you spend money on. There's some things you don't. But for me, one race buggy, it's just a lot of money. Zachary Dalton, my question is, how many Honda City Turbos do you or will you own after the re-release? I'm going to end up with 3 myself. Only one. I only pre-ordered one, and it looks like on A-Main they're no longer accepting any orders for it, so I'm only getting one. 3 would be awesome. One box art and one to do something completely crazy and unique with, and one for the future in a box would be great, but I just got one for right now. So Ian Hampson, my question is, if you could get a Tamiya to do a 1/10 scale version of any vehicle, what would that vehicle be? And if you could take any 1/10 scale model and have it full-sized, what would it be? So basically, if I could take any big thing and shrink it down, and then if I could take any little thing and blow it up, what would it be? So for the big to small, and I think I said this on the last answer video, but somebody asked something fairly similar. It would be a modern style monster truck. So, the original Tamiya monster truck was the Clodbuster. And then, they had a few iterations, but basically the last true monster truck from Tamiya was the TXT 1 and 2. Basically same chassis, different bodies and tires. So evolve that and, do upgrades and make it to where it is a more modern day, bashable, modern monster truck. Update the chassis, update the suspension, update the axles, just make everything tough enough to go out there and slam it around and bang it around like a LMT. It doesn't need to be hyper spastic, powerful like an LMT. Just a Tamiya version of the LMT is basically what I'm gunning for. Now, the other one that popped into my truck, my thought, was a true American dump truck. A lot of you guys have seen Bob from Hobby Concepts. He has actually made dump truck kits on his thing where he cuts the sleeper cab off of a truck and then adds a dump bed to it and all this stuff. I would love to have one. You see dump trucks driving around all the time. Some of them are junky, clapped out, barely running, kind of scared to be in front of it type dump trucks. And some dump trucks are really, really nice looking. But, to have a functional thing like that that's not 6 feet long and takes up all the shelf, just a good size American dump truck, steel bed, that type of thing would be awesome. But it would also cost awesome money because Tamiya just has insane pricing on the rigs, so that again would be, $1,000 kit, and probably would go over like a dead fish. So more than likely the monster trucks would do better. Now, if I could this one was a really, really hard one, to take a small one and supersize it. There's just so many. Any of the buggies would be awesome. But I kind of thought about it, and the two that I came up with as deciding ones, a lot of you guys will know, the Lunchbox. And I don't want like the Tamiya from Japan Lunchbox where they just jacked up a regular van and, you can drive it. I want a Lunchbox. I want to be able to hit the gas, do a wheelie, when I turn, I want the whole thing to sway around, just a big, sloppy, bouncy, fun to drive monster van, is what I'm thinking of. I don't need I can go out there and jack up a 4-wheel drive van and paint it yellow and call it a Lunchbox. Now I want like a true monster truck, fun having Lunchbox. And the other thing that popped in my head was the Clodbuster, a cool 1980s, heavy, clunky, kind of sketchy monster truck to drive around. Fast and fun would be great. But I'm a big kid. I just love monster trucks. So those would be my choices. Dan Jazz, do you feel like your taste in RCs is changing over time? Potentially with Al's influence, I feel like an 8S or a 6S monster may happen. I think it's never stopped changing. Now granted, you guys don't know me from years and years ago, but, everything back then had to be fast. I was the typical RC guy. No, how fast does it go? And that was all I was worried about. Did it go fast? Did it jump high? Or, was the two criteria. And, I realized going fast and jumping high, both is expensive and disappointing. Because if you can make it go really fast, it probably doesn't do anything else really well. If you can make it jump really high, then it's probably not going to do everything else really well. So just kind of gotten away from that and went to the more all around fun haver type things. For a long time, I just ran the hell out of two different Traxxas Rustlers. I'd break one, I'd have one ready to go, I'd start driving that, I'd order parts for the other one. Usually by the time the parts came in for the first one, the second one was broke, and I just kept cycling through those two for, hell, it's probably an 8-year stretch where I just beat the living snot out of both those trucks all the time. And then, I started getting into the old ones and buying the re-releases, and, that snowballed quickly. But yes, the bashers have their place here. Like I said, they're my frustration free, carefree, running around, smacking into a tree, I don't really care type trucks. As far as the 6 and 8S, I don't know. One, because they are so pricey, you're getting a really, really big truck. And I don't have the wide open area that Al has back there for really, really big trucks. I could get one and just have it to go over there. That would be fine. But at the same time, you're looking at investing $500 to $700 into something real big that's going to take up a lot of storage space here that I'm not just going to be able to go out and run around the yard. Sure, I could put 4S and 8S truck and putter it around. It's still going to probably do 35 miles an hour. But again, I really don't have the wide open space. I've got a lot of space around here, but it's kind of like a compartment here and a compartment here and a little bit here and a little bit here. So there's always something to run into. So bigger for me is not better. But I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. Al kind of did spark the crazy fast fun side of it again a little bit. And, I don't know how many of you guys have actually seen a big 8S truck go flying past you doing 55 miles an hour out in a big grass field, and the excitement and both fear of it at the same time. It's something special. It's really, really, really neat, and I can definitely see how you get addicted to it. But for me right now, I'm going to stick with mostly 3S and under, and be able to just rip it around out here and have fun with it. So Tamiya talk. So Chris and Zach over there. So they have a couple questions. He said, I see on most of your custom lunchbox builds, when you do a new custom lunchbox or custom body, do you buy just the body set or do you buy the complete truck? I am dumb and I buy the complete kit. Mostly because I don't want just a line of bodies sitting there. Like I said, there's something broken in here. But, if I have a Mutz Cuts body and I have the Mystery Machine body and I have this and I have that and I have that, I've got wheels to go with that because, one car's got green wheels and one car's got black wheels and the Mutz Cut van has like rusty wheels. And, so now I've got wheels and tires stacked up. I've got bodies stacked up. I'm taking up as much room, and for not a terrible lot more money, I just got the whole kit. A lunchbox kit, I think, is roughly $140 now. So a body set is $25. You got to buy the windshield. You got to buy the chrome set. Then I got to buy a set of wheels. I got to buy a set of tires. So you're looking at 20, 35, 50, 60, roughly $90 for me. Well, plus paint. Let's not even put paint in there. So $90 to do a complete body set and wheels and tires for a new theme build. I'm just going to spend the extra $50 and buy the whole kit and, just have that whole thing ready to run. I have to put a receiver in there, but most of them come with the ESC and the motor. Granted, I usually upgrade the motors, but still, I'm not spending an absorbent amount more by getting the whole kit, and I have the satisfaction of having that whole kit that I can take out anytime. And he said the second question is, how many lunchboxes do you have? So I think right now I have a total of 8. I have one vintage one that's new in box. I have the vintage-ish one that I built. So if you guys don't know the story, I'll try to make it as quick as possible. RCL bought me a brand 1986 new in box vintage kit. I didn't have the heart to build it. So I got a re kit, and I got all the old hardware. So the old yellow screws, and I got, the mechanical speed controller, and put in vintage electronics and old Futaba servos and all this stuff that I had here into it. So it is as close to an 86 release as it could possibly be. And so I have the new in box vintage, then I have a retro build vintage. Then I have the Fun Runner, which I don't know if you guys can see it. It's back in that corner, but it's the gray one with the Hot Wheels logo on there. That's the one left over from the original Poor Boy Speedrun. So that one, I took all the fast gear, the fast motor and the fast ESC out of it. But other than that, and well, put the Lunchbox tires back on there. But other than that, all the hop ups are still on there. So it's got the Ampro, tires stay straight up and down stuff on there, and it's got aluminum bits in it and stuff like that. So that one is the fun runner. I don't have to worry about that one getting broken. And then I have the Cannonball Run van. I've got the Mystery Machine. I've got Rolling Thunder, which is the monster truck the Lunchbox was designed after. I've got the Mutts Cuts van, and then soon to have the A-Team van. So I've got most of it done, but I need 2 pieces that I just have not been able to work out properly yet. So that will be coming up. But I do have an A-Team van in the works. And I have ideas for about 12 others. So, yeah, there's a lot of Lunchboxes around here. Okay, we're on the last page, so getting to the end. Sorry this is taking so long and I'm rambling so much. Hopefully I'll cut out a little bit in editing, but it's still going to be a long one. So Mini Z94, question for the video is, are there any brand kits you would want to see as re-release besides Tamiya? Maybe some defunct brands that are brand cars being picked up and reissued. For example, something like Team Associated or similar. Losi! Dear God, get your head out of your butts and make a re-release. Losi, 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 Losi. I don't know why Team Losi can't get it through their head. People would throw money, literally throw money at them to have re-releases of their vintage cars. And I've heard dozens of dumb excuses from them. Well, we don't want to hurt the vintage market. Stupid. You make $0 off of the vintage market. You don't give a damn about the vintage market. So don't give me that as an excuse. Associate is not worried about the vintage market. They're hawking crap out every month, month and a half. And they are literally just grabbing piles of cash. Same thing Losi could be doing, but they refuse to do it. I don't understand it. We don't have the molds. Well, you don't have the molds for a brand new kit that you made. Go out, spend a couple $100, buy a new in-box kit. Well, a couple $1,000 maybe. Buy a new in-box kit. There's 3D programs where you can just go whoop, 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 scan it, send it to a CNC machine. It machines out of a block of aluminum. There you go. You got a part. Make your molds off of those scans. Build original parts. The biggest one that annoyed me with Losi is when they came out with those little mini JRX-Ts, or the little JRX-2s. And they were like, well, we don't have the molds for the big ones, so we just made a little one. So you didn't have molds for a big one, so we made molds for a tiny one to replicate the big one. They sling more garbage than the government, so I don't understand why. Unless they have sold them all off and they don't own any of the rights to any of it. And if they don't, tell people that. Don't give me stupid excuses and lie to me in my face that you're protecting the vintage market or we didn't have molds for them anymore. Make them. Don't give me crap. Sorry. Rant number 3 in this video. But that was a touchy one. The other 2 things that popped out to me was if Kyosho could bring back some of the plastic chassis kits. The Raider, the Rocky. Those type of kits. There are tons and tons and tons of collectors and RC enthusiasts that their first car was a Rocky or a Raider or whatever. And they may not have the resources to, scrap together all these parts and pieces to buy a junker kit and then go scrounging the internet trying to find this piece and that piece and that piece. Some people love doing that. Some people loathe doing that. Some people just want to be able to go buy a kit, take it out of the box, snip off parts, build a kit, and have a memory. Why Kyosho is only focusing on, making 8 different versions of the Optima, or, make some of the more affordable kits out of plastic, remold them, do whatever you need to do, sell them at, $250 and people will buy them. I can't go out and buy a brand new Raider for $250. If they made one and they sold it for $250, I would be awful tempted to go out and buy a brand new Raider just to put it together from a kit. So I've got 2 of them here. I would still buy another one. I've got one that's a very good shape vintage one that's kind of my show car, and then I have another one over there that's not too far from it that is my runner that I can go out there and beat on, and I don't have to scratch up that one up there. And that's not saying I wouldn't be stupid enough to go out and spend $250 to buy a brand new one to sit here and have the joy of clipping off parts off of a sprue and following the instructions and building it from scratch. Build them. And the last thing in that genre, it's not actually an RC car company, but if Novak Electronics could bring back 5 of their most popular ESCs, they could make a fortune and make so many people happy. The Rebel, the Super Rooster, the Rooster, the dual motor one. Which one was that? I can't think of the name of it. But there's 5 or 6 of their top ones. Just make those. You don't have to bring back the entire lineup of 25 years of Novak Electronics. Bring back 5, 6 of your most popular ESCs. Start putting them out. Guys like me and you guys out there would buy them up like crazy. Okay, Mike Wheel 2004. My question is, painting the 6x6 school bus into the Partridge Family bus, where do you think a good place to start? I think it'd be best for airbrushing. And he said he'd like to see the Bob Ross painting. I don't even know. I had to look it up because I couldn't remember off the top of my head what the Partridge Family bus looked like. And when I saw the picture come up, I'll put a picture down here. I audibly gasped. I do not want to paint that. The 2 things I could recommend is buying a vinyl cutter and, being able to make those little graphics and cutouts for it. And because it's going to take a lot. And definitely I would say it would be an airbrush project, and it would be a long airbrush project because there's a lot of different color changes and just a lot of stuff going on in general on that thing. If you try it, I applaud you. That is a brave attempt at painting. It's a lot of masking and color changes and masking and color changes. Does not look fun. And again, you have to cut off all those masking and get them on there properly to do it right. You could do it with, markers and masking tape and razor knife, but it's going to take you a long time to get that cut out. Yeah, I can't imagine trying it, so it would be a difficult one. Havoc is Omega, the Giddy Up, yep, I can't say your whole name, Alan. So I never ask any questions, but what card don't you have that you'd like to get on the channel? And I kind of went over it earlier. I think the 2 that I would like to have on the channel, but I can't see me getting anytime soon, is the Sand Scorcher and the Avante. Just because they're just so daggone expensive, and I just have not gotten to the point to where I've wanted it enough to say, yep, I'm going to go ahead and buy that. Like I said, the Avante I would probably get before the Sand Scorcher because I can actually see the value in the parts and pieces and the makeup of it and, the engineering and all that stuff that went behind it. The Sand Scorcher is just not enough there for me to justify. He said, and in the future, even though you only do RC cars and trucks, I don't know how keen you are on like a helicopter or a boat. So flying, I am happy with the drone. If I want to go out there and fly something, I will take the drone up. It basically flies itself. I just kind of point it in the direction I want it to go and give it general directions, and it does the things I tell it to. And if something goes wrong, I hit the button and it flies back and lands. So that for me is flying. Planes, regular quads, stuff like that, I get severe stick dyslexia. Once it gets up and I start losing orientation, I just start hammering sticks and I can't, it's like my brain just shuts down. It's like up, down, left, right, up, down, left, right. I start doing the contra code, and next thing you know, this thing's in a tree or smacking off the ground somewhere, and it doesn't work well. Boats, I do have a boat. Ryan actually sent me a boat. RD's RC sent me a boat, hell, probably almost 2 years ago, I think now, Ryan. But in the wintertime, I don't think about running it. And that's the only time that the little ponds around here are actually clear and runnable. Shortly after spring and it starts warming up, there starts getting this, 4 or 5, 6 foot layer or 6 foot border of scum that gets around the edges of the ponds, and we're already beginning of July, and every pond I pass is just like a slab of green. Now my daughter may be moving to somewhere that has water, so that may be something I can take it out there. They actually have a lake out there, so that may be something later on. But for the most part, it's just cars and trucks. Something I can literally take off the shelf, walk outside, run it around, come back in, stick it back up on the shelf, and good to go. It's just kind of where I'm at. So Joe had to ask the funny question, and he said, "My question is, if tomato is a fruit, so why is ketchup not called a smoothie?" The biggest thing I can think of is if you called it a smoothie, you'd have idiots out there drinking it straight from the bottle and complaining about the taste. So probably the reason why. So Alfred Yost, my question for the video is, I was wondering what you do for a living. Keep the videos coming. So my career is IT security. I've done a million things. I've worked in a mechanic's garage. I did that for a few years. I did before that. I worked in an auto parts place. Then I went to the mechanic's garage. I worked at a wood carving company where we did carving reproductions and custom carvings. I worked in several different cabinet shops. I worked in retail and Lowe's. Let's see. I disassembled computer racks and computer equipment furnitures and stuff like that. I did some time in a claims position at Geico, and then I did 10 years, a little over 10 years at IT security at Geico, and then I moved on to another company. So yeah, it's I've done a lot of stuff, and there's been a lot of side jobs in between there. So but currently IT security is my career at this point. Still don't know what I want to be when I grow up though. Outback RC Australia. Now after this I'll have a couple questions for you guys, so stay tuned. So the first one is, what is your go-to brushed ESC and brush list for Tamiya? Covered the brushed, it's a 1060 almost every time. It works perfectly. So generally it's a 1060 ESC. Generally it's either a sport tuned, a torque tuned, or like a hobby, a Holmes hobby retro sport motor and stuff like the Tamiyas and the Kyoshos. For brushless, I would generally go with something like the, again, Hobby Wing. I think it's a 10 BLE 60, a little 60 amp brushless ESC, and usually somewhere between a 3000 and a 3500, 3600 kV motor. In general, you go above 3600 kV, you're just burning the tires off of them and, running the risk of breaking something because you just want to go stupid fast. For me, for you guys, do what you want. But for me, I'm looking at it as, there's more risk than reward. So, and for my little track, anything more than 3500 kV just becomes skating around nightmare to hold on to. So those are kind of my two go-tos. He said, what tire glue do you prefer, and do you have any special techniques for a clean job? Usually kind of whatever I have on hand. I think generally it's the Bob Smith Industries medium, and they also make a rubberized medium viscosity. The rubberized medium stuff I got when I started doing the pin turning kits, because it doesn't get as brittle and rigid as the regular CA glue does. It still remains a little tiny bit flexible, and you use it on those pin kits because you're gluing in a brass tube inside of a piece of wood, so those two things have different expansion rates. So you need a little tiny bit of give so it just doesn't break itself apart. I found it works really well, and you just kind of just put it in there, and I hate using the thin CA. I know some guys love using the thin CA. You just put a drop here and it just wicks right around the tire. I put a drop there and it wicks around the tire, the bead, the edge of the tire, my thumb, my ring finger, and then I'm walking around like this going, I need acetone, and it just doesn't work well. So I usually tend to go lightly on the medium viscosity stuff. Most of my cars, I don't have mega brushless systems in there, so the tires aren't ballooning off the rims. So a few drops just to keep the wheels from spinning is all I need. And honestly, that is the only time I glue the tires onto my Tamiya kits. is if I see it spinning excessively on the wheel, I will, then put a few drops on there just to keep it from spinning around. Now, the other time is on some of the kits, like the DB01 and some of the other like middle upper tier cars, the tires are fairly soft and they just don't want to stay on the rims, so I do have to put some glue on there. But unless I see it wanting to pop off the wheel, or I see the wheel spinning inside the tire a bunch, I don't glue. I glue them. If that doesn't happen, then I don't glue them. I just run them as is. Most of Tamiya's tires are really tight on the wheels. It's a slipper clutch at that point. Okay, his third question is right in there with the tire gluing. Do you glue the tires on your special builds that are unlikely to be driven? Well, they all pretty much get driven once, unless it's something really, really special. And there's only been like 2-3 of those. Again, unless I have to, I don't. Like all the Lunchboxes, the Clodbusters, most of my Buggies, none of them have glue on the tires. I don't put that much power into them. There's really no need. They grip very well. And, if I do, hear it going, but it's not going, I'll come in, clean them up, put a few drops of glue on the backside. Usually I do the backside of the wheels only for the Tamiya ones. Now, if it's a really soft tire, yeah, both sides, because it's still going to want to roll off the wheel. But like the nice stiff sidewalls like this, I'll put like 2 little drops of glue on the back just to not make a mess of it, and it's good enough to keep it from spinning. All right, so that is done with me answering all of your questions. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple questions myself. So, we've talked, people have asked me before, hey, you're going to do live? Are you going to ever do a live? You're ever going to do live? And, I keep putting it off, and I think I need to go ahead and do it. So, my first question to you guys is, drop me a time that you guys would be available to watch a live video. Probably first one will be a half hour. They may move up to an hour. I don't think I want to go over an hour at a time. But and when you guys put your time in, please do the conversion for me to Eastern Standard Time in the United States, where I live. Don't tell me, 4 o'clock is good for me. Well, where are you? 4 o'clock where? Malaysia, or are you in New Jersey? So just let me know, Eastern Standard Time in the United States, what would be a good time for you guys to sit down, hang out with me, and we'll talk back and forth, actually live for a change. And the other thing is, can I make a request to you guys? Let me know one thing that you really like about my channel. What is the one thing you guys tune into all the time to hear, to see, to watch, learn, whatever? What keeps you guys coming back? And then the other thing is, what do you guys hate about the channel? Is it me rambling on too long? I know I say a lot. I tried to change it. I have yet to stop saying all the time. See? I try not to. If I hear myself doing it, I try not to. But a lot of times I'll hear myself say it and go, damn it, and have to keep moving on. I do try to cut them out as much as I can out of the videos and stuff like that. Now, do you guys hate the rambling? Do you guys, hate the building? Do you guys hate the runs? Do you, well, everybody hates the runs, not do you guys, dislike the way I do the running videos? Let me know. I've got thick skin. Just be nice about it and be like, hey, I really like this thing, but, this not so much. That's what I'm looking for. Don't say, well, you're just a blathering idiot and you sit there on YouTube all the time and make money off of us, which is just corny. But, don't get stupid about it. And if you do, fine. Like I said, I got thick skin. And if you piss me off, I'll just delete it. So, but yeah, I just want to get feedback from you guys. What do you like? What do you hate? And what would be, your preferred time? And this comes from Lord Schnurt, which is probably one of the funnier names of people that actually watch the channel. Because he didn't have a channel. He said, I don't know, ask me anything. Maybe turn it around. Start asking some questions to your regulars. I can only imagine they're curious about I can only imagine you are curious about who out there is watching. The other thing is, okay, we're going to add a third one to it. This is also something I thought of. And I've seen it done before, but I haven't seen it done recently. I will go out and buy a world map and some pins on a poster board, and I'd like to map out where everybody's viewing fun. Now, don't tell me, hey, I live at 123rd Main Street in Lowell, Maryland, and I don't want your address. Just say, hey, I'm from Virginia, I'm from Texas, and if you want to get specific, hey, I'm from Dallas, Texas, or I'm from El Paso, Texas, or whatever. Let me know down in the comments, and I will start a running board. And when we come back from getting all your answers, hopefully I'll have a board up with a bunch of pins on there, because I know I've got people from the UK, Australia, Canada, US, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure I said Australia, right? New Zealand. I talk to people all over the world. It would be awesome to have a small little visual map of when people come down here and see this stuff. Be like, yeah, I've got people watching all over the world. Here's what they look like, and it would be really cool when friends and family come over here and be like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Why do you have so many? And be like, because I talked to all these people. They're all over the world. Look at them. That would be fun for me and something cool to have for me on the channel as well. And we can update it all the time. Every Ask Me Anything video, I'll be like, hey, chime in, let me know where you're at, and we can update the board with more pins. So something fun. Anyway, guys, another very, very long one. I am sorry that it's so long, but I know some of you guys love them, some of you guys hate them. Again, leave me a comment below. Should we keep this under 30 minutes and I have to do them more often? Or, are you cool with like this hour and something long minute video of me rambling on? I love doing them. I love chatting with you guys. It's like you're sitting there with me, kind of, sort of, way over there. Hi. Anyway, guys, I'm going to shut up now, go take a break. Everybody out there, as always, be happy, be healthy, be safe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. See you.